welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers, and you are in season 5 of Wrestling at Random, where the theme is each and every week we bring you a new randomly selected show, a podcast where we review a randomly selected episode, show, pay-per-view, whatever it may be of professional wrestling. And in season 5, the theme is more wrestling than ever. Upwards of 20,000 professional wrestling shows have been thrown into the randomizer, probably close to 60,000 hours of professional wrestling. And we've seen this year several times while we have had a lot of, your WCW, your WWF/WWE, some ECW thrown in. We've also had some off the beaten path stuff, some things that have never appeared in the free feed before in terms of a promotion or a territory. And I believe, Jeremy, it's another one of those this week, as I think for the first time in the free feed, we watched and will be talking about an FMW show. That's right, Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling, the wild, out of control, chaotic, bloody, violent promotion out of Japan from the 90s into the very early 2000s that was very influential on ECW and many other hardcore wrestling promotions in the United States and around the world. We have a full, complete tape, the FMW Explosion Pool Deathmatch complete tape, which comprises several matches from several shows. It is matches from August 28th, 1994, September 7th, 1994, and September 25th, 1994. That last one is actually held at an outdoor swimming pool stadium.
The way that this show works is we fire up the randomizer. It'll choose something for us to watch at random, and it chose a tape of this was a VHS tape at the time, and it's uploaded to YouTube as of the time of this recording. And so I don't look at the card ahead of time. I just let the show wash over me, and
that's quite a good pun considering it's a swimming pool deathmatch tape,
which I was very excited because it says the Explosion Pool Deathmatch, and I don't know what that means. I don't know what to expect, and we got 3/4 of the way through this tape, and I still didn't know what that meant until I saw a wrestling ring floating in the middle of a swimming pool. And I said, "Here we go."
Yeah, we will get there. It's quite the scene. It's reminiscent of another 90s professional wrestling television show scene, yet also not reminiscent of that at all.
No.
You mentioned the fact that this is a tape, and I immediately thought of how outside of, like bootleg wrestling videotapes, which is how so many of us got into Japanese pro wrestling, many people's first exposure to pro wrestling in Japan was not All Japan or New Japan or All Japan Women or UWFI. Many people first saw and bought or rented the Tokyo Pop FMW VHS series here in the US. Those shows, there were I believe there were 6 or 7, actually 10, 11, 12. There were quite a few, I think 14 of them. But they chronicled the promotion beginning with shows beginning in 1995. So it was a little bit after this. But I also think of how strangely ubiquitous these FMW commercial tapes were. I remember going to the Chicago Comic-Con, and it was mostly, this is before the Comic-Con, whether it be Chicago or San Diego or anything, it was just pop culture and movies and everything. It was strictly comic books. And I remember there being a booth where a guy was selling, and they're obviously bootlegs, but they're bootlegs, like first generation bootlegs of FMW commercial tapes. And I remember buying a few of them. This was not one of them, but this immediately took me back to that.
We'll talk a little bit about the history of FMW here before we get started, but when I hear FMW, what I think of is Onita, I think of Hayabusa, I think of Masato Tanaka, I think of Mike Awesome. These are all guys that I think of here, and we're going to see a few of them on this tape. I was pleasantly surprised that in 1994 I was going to see most of those guys.
You mentioned Masato Tanaka. I believe over on the bonus feed we have a Masato Tanaka curated list, which had a couple of FMW matches on it. I think that might actually be, again, the only FMW content here on this podcast outside of ECW Heatwave 98, which was a bonus feed show that we then also threw into the free feed a couple seasons back, which featured Hayabusa teaming with Jinsei Shinzaki to take on Sabu and Rob Van Dam.
So when Onita was reborn in late 1988, he came back doing bloodbaths in mixed wrestler versus karate matches against different guys in karate gimmicks and fake boxers and other martial arts types of characters.
It was almost this like weird funhouse version of Antonio Inoki and his different style fights. And you mentioned being reborn. The reason Onita had to be reborn was because he completely thrashed his knee, blew his knee out, destroyed his knee. He was a junior heavyweight in All Japan, completely different style. Fun fact, and I'm shocked no one has requested for us to watch this. Shortly before he blew out his knee in All Japan, he is opposite Bobby the Brain Heenan in tag team matches in All Japan in 1984. Heenan also suffered back and neck injuries on that tour that would lead to a very different career outcome. The ability to take bumps, or not as much though for Bobby Heenan, I should say, later on. But yeah, talk about two guys whose paths you would have thought never crossed, and then that they crossed in All Japan Pro Wrestling.
They also brought back a bunch of retired legends like Dick Murdoch, Tiger Jeet Singh, and The Sheik, bringing them back to Japan. The Sheik, of course, paving the way for the introduction of Sabu to the Major League Wrestling scene. We'll see him later in this tape as well. The FMW formula was simple. Japanese veterans from major promotions becoming chair-swinging crazy wild men taking on inexperienced youngsters. So lots of blood was spilled. On top, Onita usually worked, and he was in some sort of barbed wire match, getting all kinds of cut up, him and his opponents. And after the match, he would grab the microphone, symbolically cry as he had seen one of his mentors, Terry Funk, do before him, with Wild Thing playing in the background. We'll see that later on in this tape as well. Later, they when we look at these crowds, they kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Kirk and Hall couldn't hold the crowds anymore, wanting to see Onita. They had to move to bigger buildings, eventually packing baseball stadiums, and it was the popularity not only across Japan, but in the U.S., from the magazine photos of Onita covered in blood from the forehead to the arm to the back, made him a cult hero and got him the notoriety and status. Onita also would appear on television game shows and talk shows in Japan on almost a daily basis. He became a household word in Japan, to the point that that there was talk of him actually following in the footsteps of someone like Inoki and running for public office.
Yeah, he could have had a parallel political career to another notable Japanese wrestling lunatic, that being the great Sasuke, who we've talked about on this podcast before. Also, you should just note again just how influential FMW was on ECW, and the fact that ECW tried to bring in, it never materialized. They shot angles for it. Bringing Onita in, there was an idea to do an Onita Sandman exploding ring match, barbed wire match at some point, but that for a bunch of different reasons, that never happened.
No, in 1990, Dave Meltzer, Wrestling Observer newsletter, reports that in 1993, with several open wounds from a bloody match that night in Osaka, Onita, in front of his fans, jumped into a polluted, freezing cold river. The stunt nearly killed him. Between the pneumonia and the infections, he was out of action for a few months. He returned for his match with Terry Funk, which drew a whopping $1.8 million to build up his stadium show in 1994. Onita announced that if Tenryu could beat him in his specialty match, he'd retire. That match drew the company's record house of 52,000 fans.
Wow.
Turning fans away They couldn't get in. Tenryu did beat him that night, but Onita explained that he would wrestle one more year, retiring in the same building on the same date in 1995. 1995, that became FMW's biggest show of the year, and Onita would take on Hayabusa in an exploding barbed wire cage time bomb death match.
Which I believe that's the first ever like exploding ring anything that I saw. I have vivid memories of seeing that on a comp tape.
Yeah, and that match was the changing of the guard as Onita would retire. Hayabusa would step up and be the face of FMW. In 2001, the new owner, Arai, as the crowd started to decrease with the stars no longer on top in 2001, the amount of debt became too much for him, and he announced that he filed for bankruptcy, and FMW would have their final show February 4th, 2002. In May of that year, he would commit suicide so his family could collect the life insurance to pay back the money he owed the Yakuza. There were some revival attempts of FMW in the 2000s, but in pretty much FMW at that point was finished.
It still exists in a different form now. Onita runs FMWE shows, which are small buildings, but still exploding barbed wire bats, exploding rings. We should also mention if you're intrigued by what you hear about FMW on this podcast, if you go and watch this show on YouTube, Bahu BAHU, his history of FMW series, their history of FMW series is maybe the best chronicle of a wrestling promotion that you can follow in real time on YouTube. I would highly, highly, highly recommend checking that out.
Let's dig into this tape. As the opening video shows a lot of stars, I saw Hayabusa, I got excited. And we start in August 28th, 1994, where we get highlights. Looked like a women's street fight. We're going to see that in a little more clipped form later. We got great Sasuke doing some dives, and we see a bunch of finishes to some matches.
Yeah, this is very, very clipped up. We see, and when we say clipped, we mean like barely anything at all. We see a 6-woman tag. We see very clipped up clips of Ricky Fuji versus Mach Hayato, which is highly entertaining to me. I always enjoy the Ricky Fuji content. As you said, great Sasuke doing some crazy dives, bunch of different stuff. And then the first actual, again, clipped, but we see enough of it that it actually feels like a match that we're watching as it's Combat Toyota taking on Yuki Nabeno for the FMW Independent Women's and WWA Women's titles. That's one of the other things about FMW as opposed to other major, more traditional promotions in Japan, is that you actually got women's matches. Combat Toyota, Big Star Megumi Kudo, the Kudo driver. If you like the Vertebreaker or the Cop Killer, thank Megumi Kudo. She created that move and everyone stole it from her. But yeah, one of the big, I would say probably the biggest star behind or next to Onita and Hayabusa in the promotion was her.
Yeah, this was a big woman, little woman match.
Yes.
With Combat Toyota just dominating early until the smaller woman starts to show some fighting spirit, absorbing shots until Combat Toyota just kills her with some kicks to the chest. And then I'm like, no, wait, she's right back up again. Unbelievable.
Yeah. This was, again, it sort of followed you thought it was going to go the way you thought it was going to go, but then at the end, Nabeno gets the win, which I did not expect whatsoever. It's like a drop kick Sicilian slice, nearly dies landing head first on a top rope standing moonsault, meaning Combat Toyota is standing. Nabeno hits the moonsault out of the corner. But just we see this every once in a blue moon on a standing moonsault where the person who's catching, they'll catch them and it just stops the rotational progression of the moonsault. And that's what happened here. Nabeno ended up almost like sit out pile drivering herself as she landed, but got the victory.
Yeah, I was worried she didn't get all the way over almost on that, but
Yeah.
basically Combat Toyota saved her life by
Yes.
by holding her and not letting her fall head and neck first. This was terrifying.
This was like the FMW 1994 version of Logan Paul saving Rey Mysterio.
Yes.
I remember seeing that that clip a few months back. That's basically what this was.
Our next match, we were treated to Hayabusa versus Sabu in 1994. This is awesome. It's a battle of the genie pants, Adam.
Yes, it was always the funniest thing to me when I first saw Hayabusa. Like, my God, like two guys had the exact same idea. One guy didn't wear a mask, but otherwise they have the exact same gear. We should also note, if you search Sabu versus Hayabusa FMW on YouTube, somebody did an unbelievable job of taking this clipped up, edited version of the match and splicing those clips together with the full fan cam version of this match. So you can go back and watch the whole match is on YouTube as a separate file. It's amazing that someone did this. And it's worth your time to go back and watch, because this is just it's such a spectacle seeing these two guys wrestle each other, particularly here in 1994 in FMW.
Yeah, we see both guys do their own version of a somersault dive over the top to the floor. Sabu gets a chair. He sits Hayabusa in the chair, and then Sabu does a tope suicida, but cross-body style onto the seated Hayabusa.
Yeah, it's like an Owen Hart style suicide dive that's basically a splash as Hayabusa sat on the chair, as he said.
Back inside the ring, we skip ahead, and we see Hayabusa. We see some good Hayabusa flips, drop kicks Sabu to the outside. He teases a pescado, but lands on the apron. Instead, does a top rope Asai moonsault to Sabu on the floor. This was awesome. Super impressive.
Oh, absolutely. Different style, but I guess actually not that different. Hayabusa in some ways is to me very similar to Manami Toyota in that he will just try things and they won't always work, but they're the most spectacular things possible to try. Here he tries it and it works 100%.
We see Sabu with chair-related offense, the leg drop using the chair. He puts Hayabusa on a table outside the ring. Sabu comes off the middle of the top rope and does a 450 to the floor, crashing through the table.
Yeah, misses a 450. Hayabusa moves. He crashes through this Japanese table. And from here, we get the hilarity of the rest of the match of Sabu just saying in normal person voice, not screaming, not crying, not grunting, not groaning, just saying, "Ow, my back." Every single time he gets up, is picked up, moves at all. It is hilarious.
Inside the ring, Hayabusa off the top hits a shooting star press for the win. That was super fun. We get handshakes after the match. I'm going to go search out the full version of this.
It's worth watching. The fan cam is watchable. It's far enough away and not shaky enough that it's definitely worth watching the full version. We mentioned earlier in the Combat Toyota Yuki Nabeno match how Toyota saved her on that moonsault. Here, when Hayabusa does the Asai moonsault off the top to the floor, Sabu does a great job of like running in to make sure that he's there to catch Hayabusa. Like you said, this was super fun. That shooting star press was terrifying. It was the Jushin Liger style shooting star press where you're really not going up at all. You're just going out, and it really it makes the margin for error on the rotation very, very thin.
So I'm watching this on a plane as it was intended.
Why is it that it feels like the only time deathmatch wrestling of any kind comes up on this podcast is when you are doing work travel and your only option to watch the show is to watch it on a commercial airplane?
Yes, this is I was watching when we reviewed the IWA King of the Death match.
Yes.
I was watching that on a plane to LA, and here I'm watching this explosion pool death match from FMW also on a plane to New Orleans this time. So I'm watching this, so I can't hear the ring announcer very well. So I know that this is Mike Awesome as the gladiator here, but I don't know who his opponent is.
His opponent is Big Titan, who was his longtime tag team partner in FMW. Big Titan, Rick Bogner, you may know him as Fake Razor Ramon.
Yes, Fake Razor.
He is much more jacked. You're no wellness program. Not that there really wasn't the WWF either, but it was when he was there. We were still in the shadows of the steroid trials, so guys were not quite as jacked. But yes, Fake Razor Ramon, Big Titan against the Gladiator Mike Awesome. Gladiator Mike Awesome is just Mike Awesome with face paint. It's the same thing. They just call him the Gladiator. And these are, we see 2 matches between them throughout the tape. This is the first of 2. And the best way I can describe their matches, for better or worse, it depends on what you like, but they walked so Keith Lee and Donovan Dijak could run. That's what they do. It's big men doing cruiserweight stuff and the occasional power stuff, but it's the showing off of big guys can fly too.
We're talking drop kicks off the top to the outside, a Pescado onto Mike Awesome outside, back inside. We've got a Frankensteiner. Mike Awesome takes a Frankensteiner from this guy for a near fall.
Big Titan doing like a Scott Steiner style Frankensteiner.
Yeah, Titan misses a stinger splash in the corner. Awesome hits a sit-out powerbomb for the win. Titan cuts a promo after the match saying that the Gladiator got him 2 times, but he challenges him 1 more time, and we'll see that later on in this tape.
That's later on the tape. We will also see multiple times later on this tape the next level mullet of Mike Awesome in 1994. If you thought Mike Awesome in like 98 in ECW had a mullet, just wait, fire up YouTube, because 1994 was on a completely different level.
I'm watching these entrances for the next match. A guy comes out with a barbed wire crown on his head. His opponent comes out with a small flamethrower. Like what? I'm like, here we go. Now we're getting into the death matches.
We are. It's Mitsuhiro Matsunaga against Mr. Pogo in a street fight death match. And for my money, these 2 guys are 2 of the most terrifying professional wrestlers of all time. I remember first seeing FMW tapes and being utterly terrified. And for different reasons. Matsunaga is just that, like, and he's probably not as old as he seems to be, that like old man jacked, stone-faced, terrifyingly intense dude who just looks like he would do anything to you and not give it a second thought. Mr. Pogo is a horror movie villain. He comes out, he's wearing black and white camouflage pants, white t-shirt tucked into it. He's got face paint on, but the assortment of weapons that he has and that he utilizes throughout this tape are straight up horror movie level stuff.
So he trades the flamethrower for a baseball bat covered in barbed wire.
And this is a baseball bat wrapped in as much barbed wire as you could get around more barbed wire on more barbed wire on more barbed wire. And this is not rubber tipped barbed wire. This is, it is something to see.
They're brawling all over the place, outside, back inside. He hits something in between a pile driver and a power bomb onto that bat.
Yeah, my notes just say pile driver power bomb onto the bat. A word I will not repeat here on the free feed of this podcast, but only 2. Yes, I feel like anytime you're describing a move as somewhat of a pile driver and somewhat of a power bomb, that is a bad thing for the person who is taking it.
So I'm watching this guy pull out the blowtorch to heat up a weapon. So this is like a hooking blade. Is this?
It's like a sickle. It's a sickle.
Yeah,
it's scythe, a sickle, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I was like, how do you pronounce it? Is it scythe?
I always called it to me. It's just it's a sickle, sharp edged. I mean, it's a sickle as in hammer and sickle, Soviet Union. Like, and but his second, I believe, is Hideki Osaka, who we'll see later on, has the blowtorch to heat up the blade of the sickle, because just the fact that it's this horror movie sharp edged weapon is not enough. It needs to be heated up to burning levels.
So he gets hit with it in normal pro wrestling fashion. He's busted open, but then he gets stabbed in the back. Mr. Pogo stabs this man in the back repeatedly with the scythe. This is horrifying. I'm like, Jesus, he's bleeding from the back where the end is like stabbing him. I'm like, now this is a death match.
Oh, it is. And he's got the t-shirt on. You see the blood slowly expand on Matsunaga's back as Pogo is stabbing with it and then twisting it around. One of the thoughts I had, other than, God, if anyone who loves me walks in and sees me watching this, I don't know if they're going to love me anymore, is why I enjoyed 90s, this era of deathmatch wrestling, so much more than modern deathmatch wrestling, in that it was scary. The guys were scary. It seemed like they hated each other. They made you believe that they wanted to kill each other, and it felt like a horror movie inside of a wrestling ring. Whereas modern deathmatch wrestling, it may be more spectacular. There's still some great practitioners of it. You know, Jun Kasai may be the best example of a guy who combines personality, wrestling, and the deathmatch style. But even him, so often it's like, it's the most sportsman-like style of wrestling, which is so bizarre. It's like every possible weapon you could think of, but guys are hugging and shaking hands and smiling before and after. There is none of that here. Like, you're watching this with just this feeling of just like impending doom and dread as you watch this.
Yes, it's getting worse because I'm watching Pogo pour liquid all over this guy, and I'm like, oh man, he's going to light this guy on fire. And I legit believed that this guy could be lit on fire. There was never a doubt that like this could actually happen. And
but instead it was just he was pouring alcohol on the wounds. I guess he took a mercy on him to not light him on fire. But to your point, 100%, that would be the next logical quote unquote thing in the progression here.
Yeah, he ends up blowing a fireball at the guy, but misses. He hits a famouser for two. That's always weird when a wrestling move comes into this violent match.
It's one of my favorite things about the wrestling was one thing, but also just like the most violent, depraved, weapons-based horror, torture, violence. And then that's followed up by, well, let me go for the pin because I need to win this wrestling match that this torture is a part of.
So some powder gets thrown in the eyes. The barbed wire bat is now lit on fire. And he gets hit in the arm with the flaming barbed wire bat and is pinned. This was a spectacle. I was jumping around in my seat on the airplane every time something horrifying happened. I was, this was, I'm not the biggest deathmatch wrestling guy, but this kept surprising me at every turn.
It was captivating. It's a spectacle. You can't turn your eyes from it. And again, part of it is because the level of violence and the no nonsense, I guess, vibe of it. And again, and Matsunaga just, constantly trying to come back, hitting some awesome kicks, but not being able to overcome Pogo here. Like you said, Pogo gets the win. Matsunaga is in the ring, bloody, covered in water, alcohol, or whatever. There's being doused and being helped to the back. So yeah, that was something else. We go from that to this isn't the first time I've had this thought, because we saw Tarzan Goto on a different tape or something before on the bonus feed. Tarzan Goto, for me, is in a different way like some of the guys that we've seen on this podcast, where I thought that they sucked and I thought they weren't good and I didn't like them at all. And as I've seen more of us gotten older, and then as I watch this tape, I've come to the conclusion I freaking love Tarzan Goto. It is Tarzan Goto taking on Hisakatsu Oya, who Fashion Corner, particularly in this match, if you want to know what Oya looks like, He's like if Shiro Koshinaka just woke up. He's but it's purple pants.
Purple pants.
That's his look. That's his haircut. That's his body. That's his vibe. It's like bedhead Koshinaka.
Yeah, we see Goto a few times on this tape, and like at first not knowing what to expect, I was not ready to be impressed. And then by the end of this tape, I'm like, that guy's a badass. Like I thought he was a badass at the end.
The ultimate badass, which is even more incredible when you consider he's got like the least badass gear you could ever have. He has yellow boots, short yellow trunks, and a yellow with black trim Andre singlet. It's a very weird look that few men could pull off. He's got the beard, he's got the slicked back, like mid-length black hair, and he is just a badass. This match, it's not the level of depravity in terms of the types of weapons, but this is just two mean guys beating the hell out of each other. Nasty brain busters, backdrop drivers. I had forgotten how great Tarzan Goto's short range left arm lariat is. Mm-hmm. We see that several times throughout this match. And Tarzan Goto also is basically the guy who invented at least a variation of, if not actually, the styles clash. It's sort of the like a pancake out of the pile driver position. Really, the only difference is he doesn't hook his opponent's leg or arms behind his legs before he drops forward. But that's his move. It's immortalized in all the N64 games, and that is what he gets the win with here. A styles clash of sorts on a pile of chairs. Goto then stands over Oya, helps him up, and it appears that we now have an alliance between Tarzan Goto and Oya coming out of this.
Yeah, the brain busters from Goto were tremendous. He got great near falls with a couple of brain busters, ended up hitting a brain buster on a chair, and then a brain buster on a pile of chairs before hitting that Styles Clash type maneuver as you described for the victory. This was a fun introduction, and we will see this tandem again later. We see still photos from the back after these matches, and now we get an Onita video with him walking in slow motion, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, we get an Onita video with him walking in slow motion. We get a video package leading up to this match between Atsushi Onita and Masashi Aoyagi, who we've seen several times on this podcast. I think on the bonus feed in particular, maybe it was here on the free feed, that one wild, unhinged opening match on a New Japan show that had him and Michiyoshi Ohara, one of the original War Dogs pre-Bullet Club, and just crazy, chaotic, out of control. Aoyagi, a martial arts fighter, a karate fighter, if you will. We get this video package. They had actually had a series of matches in early FMW, really 4 or 5 days apart, on October 6th and October 10th in 1989. And here, almost 5 years later, is the rematch.
Barbed wire ropes. Oh, baby. At this point, I leaned over to my wife and I said, as she was watching her show, I was watching this on the plane, and I said, I'm sorry, it was rude of me. Do you want to share earphones so we can watch the same thing together? And she just looked at the barbed wire ring and said, I don't know how you watch this stuff.
That is almost word for word what my wife says when, because like I am like, just to set the scene here, we all contain multitudes. I have a very, very, very hard time watching any dramatic television program or movie where people are in any sort of physical peril, where they bleed, where they are hurt physically in any way, if there's torture, because I immediately in my head, like, put people I care about, I can't stop myself from imagining, like, oh my God, I can't handle this. I can't watch it. Yet I am able to watch this with no problem. My wife regularly points out the odd juxtaposition of those two things, and I regularly have no answer for her.
Big kicks from Aoyagi. Onita falls back into the barbed wire ropes, and we get our first explosion. I did not know that the ring was going to explode at all, so I was very excited when he fell back in the ropes and it exploded.
Yeah, this was our first. We were not warned that this was going to be explosive based, and the setup here is on two sides of the ring, like the two sides that the hard cam is facing, the near and far ropes. The ropes are still up, and there's barbed wire wrapped in a X shape around the ropes. The left and right sides of the ring, the ropes are gone. There are no ropes. It is just open. And on those sides on the floor, there are huge beds of barbed wire, which we will see later, also have explosives.
Yeah, you see Onita coming off these the barbed wire ropes, and you can see the barbed wire pulling at the shirt of Onita. There's blood on the arms of Onita already. He catches a kick, takes him down, puts on a half crab. Aoyagi powers out of it, and he's working over the bloody back of Onita.
We should mention with the explosion, one of the great things here is how everyone reacts. As you mentioned, Aoyagi kicks Onita. He goes into the barbed wire board after several teases. They're also everyone throughout the show is great, like Terry Funk style, teasing going into barbed wire, teasing going to the explosives. But when the first explosion goes off, everyone, including the referee, goes down. As you said, Onita, he's stuck in it. He has to pull himself out. And Aoyagi is great, like immediately, like holding his ears, stumbling, like trying to get his equilibrium from the blast.
Yeah, this was great. Onita crawls back into the ring. He's a bloody mess. More stiff kicks to Onita. Onita moves enough to throw him by the gi and get him off onto the other exploding barbed wire board on the floor. They both crawl back inside. Someone threw a fireball at ringside. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I think that was Pogo.
More kick offense. Onita shoves him off. Aoyagi goes back first into the exploding barbed wire ropes. Onita hits a power bomb. Aoyagi's able to answer the count. So Onita hits another power bomb, and then after 3 of them, Aoyagi can finally no longer answer the 10 count. Onita is your winner.
The thing I love about these Onita matches that we see throughout this tape is that, like everyone, the whole FMW, like the reason the draw was the explosions, the draw was all the blood. The draw was Onita. And the draw was Onita in peril. You take away the fireballs, you take away the explosives, you take away the barbed wire on the floor. These matches are structured no different than a Dusty Rhodes match. Or take any of your like classic white meat babyface. It's all, he might as well be Ricky Morton out there. It's the exact same structure. It's the exact same way to get to the finishes. It's just a completely different environment in which it's all occurring.
We get a woman's come as you are street fight that we saw a couple of clips from at the beginning of the tape. This was heavily clipped, lots of blood. We get a...
That's my only disappointment about this tape is we barely get to see any of Megumi Kudo. We see her a little bit here, but we don't see enough of her. And for a full representative sample of FMW, I would have liked to see her in less clipped form than this.
No, we saw some poor bloody woman who was killed with a backdrop driver, then a power bomb for the pin. After the match, she got power bombed on her head again. This was
that was horrific. We then have teammates going at it. It is a total chaotic
big
brawl.
Pull apart. Yeah.
Big pull apart. That then leads us to Big Titan versus Gladiator Part 2.
We got the rematch. So this was pretty good for the clip form. Again, we've got it in. Awesome gets knocked to the floor. Titan hits him with a pescado to the outside again. It's more big guys doing some flying. Back inside, they fight on the top rope. Awesome hits a top rope Frankensteiner for 2. Awesome tries a dive over the top rope. He barely makes it, almost kills himself. This was terrifying.
It's the Mike Awesome dive. However, Mike Awesome predicts the Undertaker's future here as it's the exact same landing the Undertaker would take against Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, knocking himself loopy.
Back inside, Awesome hits a top rope splash for a 2 count. A sit out
which is
power.
it's always weird. We've talked about before when we see moves that are guys finishers later on, like when
Yes.
Rob Van Dam would use the frog splash for a 2 count. Here, Mike Awesome, the big splash is his finisher in ECW. It's what wins him the world title, the whole deal. Here, it's just a 2 count.
He hits the sit out power bomb that he won the first match that we saw with, but gets a near fall this time. Awesome goes right back to the top, tries a splash again, but Titan gets his knees up, hits a Frankensteiner, gets a long 2 count on Awesome. He hits a power bomb to Mike Awesome, and Titan gets the pin this time.
Watching this, like, I'm very surprised that, I guess maybe there's something personality wise that we know, but that like Mike Awesome got a bunch of chances in the US and made the most of it. And Big Titan, outside of being fake Razor, never
Razor
got any
killed
chances.
That guy's career, basically.
He killed it dead. Yeah. Because when you watch him against Mike Awesome here in 2 matches, there's no discernible difference as to who's the better guy. Like, I'm shocked that Big Titan didn't get a shot in ECW, that they didn't get brought in as a tag team somewhere. Like, you write the guy off because of the fake Razor thing, but apparently here he's every bit the equal of Mike Awesome.
Now we've got the tag team match with the 2 guys we saw earlier. Who are the opponents?
So it is the match here we have, and we are now in we are September 7th, 1994, by the way. It is Hisakatsu Oya and Tarzan Goto teaming to take on Katsutoshi Niyama and a young Mr. Ganasuke, who barely resembles the Ganasuke that we would see later in FMW as Mr. Ganasuke, as the chief rival of Hayabusa. When Hayabusa would drop the Hayabusa character and become H without a mask, wearing like Stevie Richards short shorts, Mr. Ganasuke would take up the Hayabusa gimmick and gear, obviously nowhere near its svelte. And they would have some ridiculous feuds. This was during the era where FMW tried to go as much into the entertainment side as the deathmatch side. It was a very strange time period in FMW, but here his job basically is to just get killed for a lot of this match. Niyama is a short, stocky kicker who throws a nice uranagi. He's one of those guys that, like, there's so many guys in FMW, the non-deathmatch guys that you don't associate being deathmatch guys, that never really do anything else. Like, you think of like Masato Tanaka, and then there's like 20 other guys that may have looked similar to Tanaka in the first year of their career that you never hear anything from. Niyama is sort of that guy here.
Yeah, we got both guys going through tables at the hands of Goto. We've got brainbusters all around, a brainbuster on the chair. We get that Styles Clash predecessor type move onto a chair, and everyone is knocked out. A hammer to the face happened at one point. Everybody's knocked out. The referee stops the match, and Goto and his partner win by knockout.
This was an awesome extended squash of these 2 guys who were bitter rivals. They've become partners, and they are just total ass kickers as a tag team. This was tremendous. I loved every second of this.
Same. This was where I said, "Oh, this Goto is a badass." Like, this was great.
It's great. This is like and it's a little longer, but this is, to me, was like a Samoan SWAT team / head shrinkers level squash here. Just violence from Oya and Goto in particular.
No rope barbed wire match again, Adam.
No explosions, though. I was waiting for explosions. We don't have the explosions here, but we don't need them when you see the other things that happen in this match. It is 2 icons of FMW. It is Mr. Pogo. It is Atsushi Onita. Brass knuckles title barbed wire death match.
Whew. We get you get Onita goes back first into the barbed wire ropes. He knocks Pogo outside onto the barbed wire board. This is where I noted no explosions this time,
which is odd because it's the exact same setup. It's the barbed wire ropes on 2 sides, no ropes on the other 2 sides, giant barbed wire boards, but no explosions.
And then I screamed with terror on the airplane as Pogo has the Seath out again. And he hits Onita in the back with it. Not just like hits him with it, but like stabs him with the pointy end of it. And
think about the spot you see sometimes. I know we've seen it in AEW, we've seen a few other places where like a guy has a spike or a knife and runs into the corner, wildly swings it. Think of when Liger, as Kishin Liger did this against Minoru Suzuki right before Liger retired, and he swings it, and the guy misses, and the spike or the knife sticks in the turnbuckle pad, and you're like,
yes.
Oh, if he would have hit him like that, it would have killed him. Here, Pogo does that, but Onita doesn't move, and he just stabs him in the back with this. It is horrifying.
Yes, and then you all of a sudden see the blood start coming out of the and covering the shirt from the lower back from the stab wound that just happened to the lower back. Jesus, he's bleeding all over. He's hit with a broken piece of the table in his now injured bloody back. There's blood all over the broken table after that shot. He tries to stab him again, but it's blocked by the table. And so that turnbuckle spot you described, we see the spike going through a table.
Yeah, the table piece that Onita is holding to block. This is like Mortal Kombat at this point. That seems tame compared to the borderline fatalities that we're seeing here. Onita is able to get the board away, waffles Pogo with it, sends Pogo out on the other side onto the barbed wire, and does this awkward like half somersault, land off the apron, sort of lands more on the board than Pogo, and they're both stuck in it now.
Pogo hits Onita with a fireball to the back. This is not like a flash paper fireball. This is like spitting fire. Like,
well, he has a stick that has like whatever, and then he douses that with alcohol. He drinks something, and then he blows that on this, and it sends the fireball. And Onita is chest first on the barbed wire rope, so he's trapped. Pogo blows fire on him again, like horror movie villain stuff here inside of a wrestling ring for Mr. Pogo.
So the barbed wire baseball bat is in the ring. He gets hit in the chest with it for a long 2 count. He goes for the fire again, but Onita hits him. He drops the fire. So Onita loads up the fuel in his mouth, and he spits a fireball of his own. DDT onto the chairs, and he gets the 3 count. After the match, Onita is attacked with the barbed wire bat while we hear Wild Thing playing. He recovers enough to attack Pogo on the way back to the locker room. Onita's in the back throwing stuff around backstage. Wild scene.
Total chaos at the end. Match was, again, for the context of what this is, this was awesome in terms of like what the goal of any match with Onita in this era is make the fans terrified that Onita is going to die, have them cheer Onita on. Onita sells incredibly well, comes back and valiantly vanquishes the horror movie foe. Perfectly done here.
So then we see a clip where we see the wrestling ring in the middle of an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and we see a little boat taking people to the ring. This is incredible.
It's like a little motorized like dinghy boat. They have several of them. This is how they do their entrances. This is as if like John Zandig booked Club La Vila is the best way I can describe this. This is if FMW did a spring break episode, spring break tape, this is what this would be like.
And now the whole pool part of the death match finally makes sense to me, as this is the first time I've seen a swimming pool up to this point, and this is what the pool in pool death match means. And we go to we see 2 guys in a hospital, and then we come back to the ring where we're in the pool arena. It's dark now. We saw the shots of the pool arena were during the daylight last time. Now it's dark, but you can still see the water around the ring. And who are the guys in this match?
So the story here is that Wing Kanamura, who we've seen several times in
my notes say maybe Wing Kanamura.
It is Wing Kanamura. who, again, I bring this up all the time, but if you've never seen him wrestle before and you are about the same age that Jeremy and I are in our early to mid 40s, and you read wrestling magazines, you will know Wing/Kentaro Kanemaru as the man who had his arm disfigured with a spike by Kevin Sullivan, which was shown in gruesome detail in the wrestling magazines back then. It's Wing Kanemaru who has recruited Matsunaga, who we saw earlier, to turn and join him and join Wing to go against FMW, ostensibly here represented by the team for a third time. We see them the second time as a team of Oya and Tarzan Goto.
Oya's got black pants this time instead of the purple.
Yes.
And this was a fight, and of course, we have Goto just killing everyone, including the referee and his own partner. I don't know what's happening.
Well, Goto, what happens here is like Oya turns on Goto. Goto is fighting both these guys by himself. Oya's on the apron, and then Oya turns on him, and we get apparently ostensibly Oya joining Wing Kanemaru and Mitsuhiro Matsunaga, and they beat the hell out of Tarzan Goto until emerging from the water, underwater, like a sea creature. I assume this man has gills. Atsushi Onita appears out of the water, jumps into the ring, and clears house. All hell breaks loose. Chaos and insanity throughout this arena. Boats are used. Men hop in boats to travel to the other side of the arena via pool to continue the fight. This is unhinged.
We saw the boats delivering wrestlers to the ring, so seeing Onita swim to the ring to make the save was just, it was heroic and awesome. This was so cool. What a scene this was. Guys getting thrown into the pool. That's never not awesome. You've got fights all over the building. Onita in a boat going back to the ring. I got to get back to the ring. He gets back in a boat.
Yes, it's a kind of promo.
Yes, this was so fun. Goto gets in the boat and takes this sad ride back, and this was completely wild. I want more pool matches, and I've got more pool matches as we get our final match of the tape.
Well, we had Goto and Onita kind of closing that whole deal out, where Onita seems like he's shouting at Goto, seems like he wants to join forces with him to fight off this trio now. Goto says no thanks, hops in his little boat,
takes a sad
back to figure out what to do next. What a great use of the environment.
Yes.
I feel like to me, this needs to be spoken about on the same level as the Tupelo concession stand brawl. This was just tremendous pro wrestling absurdity that worked because you are operating within all the rules and physics and everything of pro wrestling. Just tremendous.
We hear Wild Thing, of course, and Onita takes a boat to the ring this time. He doesn't have to swim. He takes the boat to the ring. We've got barbed wire ropes and a pool. So we've got it all here in this one. And explosions.
And a pool. And so the rules, we sort of reverse engineer the rules here. I figured out after the match was over. And the idea here is it's 3-on-3, it's elimination. And the way you are eliminated is by being knocked out of this ring into the water, which then explodes. We have exploding water here, which seems counterintuitive, but it's FMW, so it works. The other noteworthy thing to me is that the ring, which is again suspended somehow in the middle of the pool, it is on the water. It feels much less stable than it did in the previous match. It's swaying a lot more. It's also where the outside of the ring, because there's the ring, there's the floor, which seems like it looks like a magic eraser, basically, like a giant magic eraser that the ring is on, and then there's the water.
Onita is immediately thrown face first into a barbed wire bat.
Well, let's tell the people who is in this match. This is a 3-on-3 elimination match. It is Atsushi Onita, Kazutoshi Niyama, and Mr. Ganisuke, the team that we saw earlier getting mauled by Tarzan Goto and Oya before they turned on
good
each other.
partners for Onita. Not good.
No, not in. Well, it didn't seem that way. However, in some ways, this feels like this is the beginning of the legend of Mr. Ganisuke. By the time we get to the end of this, they take on the Gladiator Mike Awesome. Hideki Osaka, who I mentioned earlier, was helping Mr. Pogo heat up blades, and Mr. Pogo. So that's the sides here for this battle.
All right, walk us through this match. I'll chime in with my my on the plane experience of watching this match.
Okay. Let me make sure. So it's tornado style. There's no ropes.
Yeah. Elimination.
Yeah, no ropes on any side. Two of the sides have barbed wire instead of ropes. So that's a difference from the earlier barbed wire matches. There are no ropes up at all. On two sides, there are barbed wire in the place of ropes. So instead, the ring is floating. Onita throws Pogo out to, like I said, this foam magic eraser looking outside, and they do a lot of teasing, being thrown into the water, running up to the edge, almost going off into the water. They do not. Guys are doing stuff in the ring, but it's all just a backdrop to Onita and Pogo on the floor trying to murder each other.
That's right. And then Onita, when he's in the ring, getting tossed toward the barbed wire, he does an awesome baseball slide counter to avoid it every time.
Yes. Also, this is the point where I noticed, oh my God, it's Red Shoes Uno as referee in this match. I always, whether it be here or in War, I always forget about Red Shoes, relatively long as a young referee, but pre-New Japan career here, trying not to die in FMW. Onita sends Pogo out to the floor again, throws him into the barbed wire covered support beams that are sort of attached diagonally to the actual ring post to attach the ring itself to this floating device that keeps the ring from being submerged. Meanwhile, in the ring, Mike Awesome is killing Niyama with several barbed wire bat shots, and then hits, I don't know, one of the best power bombs I've ever seen. He does the double underhook, like the Tiger Driver style Awesome bomb. But when he does it, he flips Niyama into the air and he just lets him go. And Niyama's up in the stratosphere. And then as he comes down, as gravity takes hold, Awesome grabs him and takes him down in powerbomb fashion.
Yeah, those baseball bat shots to the gut were violent. That powerbomb was awesome. The pin attempt was broken up.
One of the funny things in FMW is the difference in terms of the ferocity of weapon shots on young guys that are unproven as opposed to the main guys. It's very noticeable who's taking what.
Yeah, this was brutal. And Awesome gets the first elimination here by slamming a guy into the water for the pyro to go off, and that's when we see that the explosion happens and he's eliminated.
Yeah, Awesome slams Niyama into the exploding water. He's gone. We see a shot of Pogo. His face is a mess. We see Onita with those awesome running side headbutts. Such a cool visual here, trying to headbutt Pogo out of the ring onto the floor into the water. Pogo sidesteps. He does 2 or 3 of these up against the barbed wire ropes. Pogo sidesteps the third one, and Onita goes straight into the exploding barbed wire. From there, I'm sure you were thrilled to see Pogo. He gets the sickle, the seath, the skeeth, whatever you want to call it, and instead of stabbing Onita in the back, he stabs him in the stomach and twists and grinds it around, as you see again the red just build and blow up on the white shirt of Atsushi Onita.
I'm writhing in my airplane seat as I'm watching him twist this, and I'm screaming. I'm like, oh, it's so gross and brutal. This was something. Onita somehow wrestles it away and hits Pogo with it. He hits Awesome with a barbed wire bat.
It's an awesome sequence where the Gladiator, Mike Awesome, accidentally clotheslines Hosaka. Ganisuke then hits a drop kick to save Onita. Onita then gets up and immediately grabs a sickle. he hits him with it. Then he hits a DDT. He's running wild now with the bat. And then he and Ganisuke, and this is the gift for this week's show.
Yes.
He and Ganisuke hit Mike Awesome. Mike Awesome takes a crazy flying bump after getting hit with the barbed wire bat into the exploding water, never to be seen or heard from again.
Nope, and we're 2-on-2 now. And one guy's getting the seeth to the forehead. I'm looking away. I can't watch as Onita's getting the barbed wire bat to his already bleeding stomach from the seeth. Onita's partner goes back first into the exploding barbed wire ropes.
Then the thing you never want to see if you're an opponent, Mr. Pogo goes into his pockets. He goes into his pockets and he grabs the paraphernalia he needs and he lights the torch. He blows fire on Ganisuke, and this is by far the most contact the fire blowing makes to an opponent. Ganisuke is lit up for a second here, but he kicks out. We then cut to the look on Onita's face as he's crawling, trying to save him. A lot of people use this word in modern wrestling, but that shot of the fire, Ganisuke kicking out, and then the cut to the close-up of Onita trying to crawl to the middle of the ring, that is cinema in professional wrestling.
Yeah, and this was the biggest pop for me, was the kick out at 2. My notes just say, what? With exclamation points everywhere.
Especially because it wasn't Onita. You figure for sure Ganisuke is going to get pinned here.
Yeah, and I was shocked. He misses a fireball attempt at Onita. Then a diving crossbody by Ganisuke eliminates both him and somebody else.
He eliminates Pogo here. Ganisuke takes him and Pogo out with like a suicide dive, spear of sorts to take them both out into the water, into the explosives. So now we're down to, I think it was Pogo, and we're down to Onita and Hosaka. Onita immediately throws him immediately throws him into the exploding barbed wire, hits the Thunderfire powerbomb, and gets the win.
The crowd celebrates to the Wild Things song. They take the boat back as Onita helps his partners to the back. Everyone is dead on the locker room floor as Onita sits over them, helping to bandage everyone up. Onita puts him in an ambulance. He stands victorious amongst the people as the tape ends. Tremendous.
Unbelievable. Just, again, like we talk about deathmatch wrestling, and
I'm not a fan.
No, you aren't at all. I am more than you, but I'm not like a hardcore deathmatch wrestling fan. The reason this works, again, is because it's all built on the emotion of Onita and seeing Onita suffer and needing to see him triumph. And then he does. And then everything that builds off at the stars on the heel side that are made from beating him down, the stars on the babyface side that are made from being at Onita's side. What Ganisuke does here raises him to another level. The other thing about this that works and makes it feel triumphant rather than sad is that, to your point earlier, and you rattled off the numbers, this era of FMW, this is mega popular. This is happening at Osaka Joe Hall in front of 16,000 people. This is happening at this Olympic-sized pool arena. Like, you're seeing these guys do this, but it's in a huge setting for a big payoff. It feels massive as opposed to a lot of modern deathmatch wrestling, which is small buildings, no emotion. Guys just sort of going through the motions in this weird sportsman-like way of killing each other. Like, this type of deathmatch wrestling, hook this into my veins every time, every day of the week when you have an emotional center, emotional core that it's all built around, like Atsushi Onita.
Well, and that's the thing. You just don't have Onita's to make this work. Like you had. I mean, maybe a John Moxley every once in a while is close. But
well, Nick Gage is the closest example of that in GCW, but even that's done, and it's a bit more tongue in cheek at times. But it's that idea of for me, a promotion like this, it has to be a pardon the pun, a cult of personality built around 100%. One figure, like the heyday of Nick Gage and GCW, and obviously on a bigger scale here with Atsushi Onita and FMW.
Favorite thing on this show?
Oh man. I mean, my favorite thing going into it, the thing I was most hyped about was seeing Sabu and Hayabusa in 1994 face off in a singles match. Seeing Onita just be this perfect 80s style, like American babyface in this hellscape of a setting. It's just such a singular thing to watch. I would say my favorite thing on this is just how much I loved watching Tarzan Goto be a badass. For a guy that when I was getting these tapes, in my late teens, early 20s, I thought nothing of Tarzan Goto. I thought Mr. Pogo was lame. Now I'm like, oh my God, this dude is terrifying, and I love him for what he is. But yeah, I would say that Tarzan Goto in particular.
Yeah, and of course, honorable mention to Onita emerging from the pool after swimming to make the save. Yes,
that is the moment. That is the gif. I wish it was the gif, but that is the moment of the show for sure.
Worst thing on this show.
Oof. I mean, some of the stuff I wish was not so clipped to the point of like you couldn't even really tell that it was a wrestling match. The scariest thing on this show, even with all the weapons and the spikes and the stabbings, was that standing moonsault from Yuki Nabeno that Combat Toyota saved her on. But yeah, just honestly, for FMW 1994, I expected to have a more mixed reaction to this, having not watched it in full. Meaning an FMW show in a long time. Like, I loved like 95% of this. This was a great time.
Same. I had not high hopes coming into this. Really enjoyed it, and that's from a guy who doesn't like the deathmatch stuff at all. But I enjoyed this highly. This was great. Tons of fun. And if you want to see the GIF we were talking about, of course, you should be following us on all the social media platforms at Wrestle at Random. That's for Instagram, Twitter, X, Threads, Blue Sky. We're on everywhere at Wrestle at Random. If you want to watch the video version of this podcast, you can do that. And even if you don't, throw us a subscribe over at our YouTube channel. That helps us work the algorithm so other wrestling fans can find the show. That's just search for Wrestling at Random Podcast over on YouTube.
And you should watch it, though, because Quick Fashion Corner, each and every week on the free feed, I wear a wrestling t-shirt that I'd say 9 times out of 10 is directly related to the show that we're watching. And I'm quite proud of my sweet FMW logo t-shirt that I'm wearing right now. So go check that out on the YouTube channel.
We mentioned the free feed. That's what you're listening to right now. There's 100+ episodes right now available to you, all evergreen content. Don't be upset that you missed a show. It's there waiting patiently for you to listen to it. You can stack them up and listen to them on a road trip or an airplane even, just like I wish I had. So go ahead and...
We're getting to the point, Jeremy, between this and the bonus feed where... you hear rumblings of, when are humans going to go to Mars? It might take a year or two to get there. You might be able to do at least a one-way trip to Mars listening nonstop to this podcast and nothing else at this point without repeating an episode.
That's right. You keep mentioning the bonus feed. That's available over at patreon.com/wrestling at random, where every week we do an extra show. We do a show that you have to pay $5, but that unlocks the entire back catalog of this podcast, over 160+ as of the time of this recording, and only more growing. There's so many episodes that you haven't heard yet over on the bonus feed. We got curated lists, we got single matches, whole shows,
movies,
wacky stuff over there. Give the bonus feed a try. Again, 1 month unlocks the entire back catalog for you to pick and choose and have a good time with. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to call it a podcast. So thanks everyone for listening. Adam, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Randomizer, and thank you, Atsushi Onita. This was a depraved but highly enjoyable time watching FMW Pool Explosion Deathmatch complete tape.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.